The Whitmore mansion stood like a castle on the edge of New York's Upper East Side, its tall glass windows glistening in the morning sun. Inside, however, was chaos. Chaos that no amount of marble floors or sparkling chandeliers could disguise. Richard Whitmore, a billionaire real estate mogul, had 5 children who were famous in their own right. Not for charm, not for talent, but for being the most impossible kids in the entire city. Each one was sharp, loud, and uncontrollable, like a storm wrapped in expensive designer clothes. The oldest, 13-year-old Ethan, was brilliant but arrogant, always looking for ways to humiliate anyone who dared to tell him what to do. Chloe, 11, had a mischievous smile that masked her cruel tricks. Her pranks had driven 3 nannies to tears in a single week. Lucas, 9, was restless, forever breaking things just to watch people panic. Then came the twins, Sophia and Sam, only 6 years old, but already masters at teaming up to cause chaos. No nanny had lasted more than a day. Some stormed out before sunset, others left in tears by breakfast. A few simply ran out of the mansion mid-shift, vowing never to return. The children had broken 23 nannies in less than a year. "Why don't you just hire military trainers, Richard?" a colleague once joked. But it wasn't funny anymore. The billionaire's reputation was crumbling. Headlines mocked him. "Money can't buy discipline. Whitmore kids drive out another nanny." On a bright Monday morning, the cycle repeated again. The latest nanny, a trembling woman in her 40s, marched down the long driveway, dragging her suitcase behind her. "Never again," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "Those kids belong in a zoo." Richard Whitmore rubbed his temples inside his grand office, his tie loosened, his patience gone. His empire was built on order and discipline, yet inside his own home, he was powerless. He knew his children were hurting. They had lost their mother years ago, and wealth had filled the void with everything but love. But no one seemed able to break through their walls. That was when she arrived. Her name was Angela Carter, a tall, graceful black woman in her mid-30s, with eyes that held both warmth and fire. Unlike the others, she didn't come dressed in stiff uniforms or with a trembling voice. She walked into the mansion wearing simple clothes, her posture calm, her steps steady, as though she had already decided she would not be intimidated. The children watched from the staircase, whispering, smirking, ready for their next victim. Ethan folded his arms and muttered, "Bet she won't last an hour." Chloe grinned wickedly. "Let's make it fun." But Angela only smiled softly when she saw them. She didn't flinch at their glares, didn't stumble over her words. She simply looked up at them and said, in a calm but firm voice, "5 children? Good. I've been waiting for a real challenge." For the first time in a long time, the house went silent. Angela Carter didn't waste a second. She set her small leather bag on a marble floor and looked at Richard Whitmore with calm, steady eyes. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her tone firm but respectful, "you can relax. I'll handle your children." Richard raised an eyebrow. He had heard those words before, from dozens of nannies, teachers, and so-called child experts. Every one of them had failed, but something about Angela's calmness unsettled him in a good way. The children, however, were far less impressed. From the staircase, Ethan sneered. "Another babysitter with too much confidence. This is going to be fun." Chloe whispered, "Bet she cries before dinner." The twins giggled like little shadows. Angela turned toward them, her smile unwavering. "Children," she said, her voice carrying across the grand hall, "come downstairs. I want to meet you properly." They exchanged glances. No nanny had ever ordered them to do anything, not on the first day. Most begged or bribed. Ethan smirked and crossed his arms. "And what if we don't?" Angela tilted her head slightly. "Then I'll just come up there and get you myself. And trust me, you won't like that." For a moment, Ethan faltered. Something about her tone didn't sound like an empty threat. Slowly, grudgingly, he descended the stairs, the others following behind him. Richard, watching from his office doorway, almost choked on his coffee. No one had ever gotten them to obey so quickly. They stood before her like little soldiers in rebellion. Angela studied each of them, her gaze sharp but not unkind. Then, to their surprise, She crouched down to their level. "I know who you are," she said softly. "The world thinks you're monsters. But I don't believe that. I believe you're just children, smart, strong, hurting, and daring someone to prove they care enough to stay." For a brief second, something flickered in Chloe's eyes. Was it guilt? But Ethan quickly masked it with a laugh. "Oh, please. Save the speech. You'll be gone by morning." Angela stood, brushing her hands together. "We'll see." That morning, the children launched their first attack. At breakfast, the twins dumped an entire bowl of cereal onto Angela's chair, expecting her to scream. Instead, she calmly picked up the chair, wiped it clean, and continued eating as if nothing happened. When Lucas broke a vase in the hallway, she didn't shout. She handed him a broom. "You break it, you clean it." And when Chloe poured orange juice into Angela's handbag, Angela simply laughed. "Thank you, dear. I needed a new one anyway." By lunchtime, the children were confused. Nothing they did rattled her. No yelling, no crying, no running. That evening, as Angela tucked the twins into bed, Ethan whispered to Chloe, "She's different, but she won't last." Yet deep down, for the first time, Ethan wasn't sure. The Whitmore mansion had never known peace, not with the three children constantly running wild. But on Angela's second day, the house seemed quieter. Not because the children had given up, but because they were plotting. Ethan had whispered his plan over breakfast. "We'll scare her so bad, she won't even sleep here tonight." Chloe smirked, while the twins eagerly nodded. They would lock a snake from the estate gardens inside her room. But Angela Carter wasn't ordinary. She had grown up in the roughest part of the city, raised by her grandmother after her mother died young. Tricks and cruelty didn't shock her. They only made her sharper. And when she noticed the children sneaking around with suspicious smiles, she knew something was coming. That night, just as they expected, she opened her bedroom door and saw the coiled reptile on the floor. The children waited down the hallway, whispering, "She's going to scream." But instead, Angela calmly picked up a broom, guided the snake into a laundry basket, and carried it outside without a sound. When she returned, she didn't scold them. She didn't even mention it. Instead, the next morning, she gathered the children in the grand dining room. "You think you're testing me," she said, pouring herself a cup of tea. "But now it's my turn." The kids froze. No one had ever dared test them. Angela leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "For 1 week, you'll follow 3 rules. If you break them, I'll walk out that door. If you keep them, I stay. Deal?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What rules?" "1," she began, raising a finger. "You clean up after yourselves. No maids, no staff, just you." Chloe frowned. Ethan smirked, thinking it would be easy. 2, Angela continued. "You eat at the table with me every night. No excuses." "And 3, she said, her voice dropping lower. "You respect each other. No name-calling, no hitting, no cruelty. You fight, you lose me." The room was silent. The children didn't know what to say. No nanny had ever given them conditions. Usually, it was the other way around. Ethan broke the silence with a scoff. "And why would we want you to stay?" Angela smiled. "Because for the first time in your lives, someone isn't afraid of you. And deep down, you don't want me to leave." "Not really." Her words cut deeper than the children expected. Chloe looked away, fiddling with her bracelet. The twins exchanged nervous glances. Even Ethan felt a strange twist in his chest, though he quickly masked it with sarcasm. "Fine," he muttered. "We'll play your game. But don't say we didn't warn you." Angela sipped her tea calmly. "Good. Then let's see who lasts longer, you or me." The first day under Angela's rules was chaos. At breakfast, the kitchen staff stood aside as the children stared at the dirty dishes from the night before. For the first time in their privileged lives, Ethan, Chloe, and the twins were expected to clean. "This is ridiculous," Ethan muttered, glaring at Angela, who sat at the head of the table sipping her tea like a queen. "We don't wash dishes. We don't even know how." Angela raised an eyebrow. "Then it's a good time to learn. The sink's over there. Soap's on the left. Don't break the china. It's worth more than your allowance." The twins groaned loudly. Chloe, with manicured nails, held up her hands in horror. "My nails will chip." Angela didn't flinch. "Then wear gloves." The children looked at each other, but Angela didn't budge. For the first time, they realized she wasn't bluffing. Begrudgingly, they began scrubbing. Plates clattered, soapy water splashed, and complaints echoed through the kitchen. Ethan deliberately left grease on a plate and slammed it onto the drying rack. Angela walked over, held it up, and simply said, "Try again." The defiance in Ethan's eyes faltered for a split second. Something about the way Angela looked at him, firm, unshaken, made him pick up the sponge again. That evening, they faced Rule 2, dinner together. Normally, they dined separately, each child retreating to their rooms with food delivered on trays. But Angela insisted they all sit at the long mahogany table. The awkward silence was unbearable. The twins kicked each other under the table. Chloe scrolled on her phone. Ethan picked at his food like it was poison. Angela finally spoke. "You know, when I was your age, dinner meant survival. My grandmother worked double shifts to put one plate of food on the table, and I had to share that plate with my little cousins. You've never known hunger, but you've known loneliness. Look around. You live in a palace, yet you eat like strangers." Her words lingered in the air. Chloe paused, lowering her phone. The twins exchanged guilty looks. Ethan's fork froze midair, though he quickly disguised it with a smirk. "Nice speech," he muttered, "but don't think it changes anything." Angela smiled faintly. "We'll see." The final rule, respect, was tested later that night. The twins got into a shouting match over a toy, voices echoing through the halls. Angela appeared instantly, her gaze sharp. "What did I say about respect?" she asked, arms crossed. "They started it." One twin whined. Angela crouched to their level, her voice steady. "No, you both started it. Respect isn't about waiting for the other person to be kind first. It's about deciding who you are, no matter what they do." The twins blinked, caught off guard. No nanny had ever spoken to them like that. For the first time, they were silent. That night, Ethan whispered to Chloe in the hallway, "She won't last a week. We'll make sure of it." But deep down, even he wasn't so sure anymore. The next morning, Angela woke up to find the mansion unusually quiet. Too quiet. Normally, the twins were already running wild, and Ethan's music shook the walls. She slipped on her slippers, walked toward the kitchen, and froze. The entire room looked like a hurricane had passed through. Flour coated the marble counters, raw eggs dripped down the cabinets, and sticky syrup pooled across the floor. In the center of the chaos stood the billionaire's children, grinning like villains in a cartoon. "Breakfast is served," Ethan said smugly, holding a spatula with a burnt pancake hanging limply from it. Angela didn't flinch. She surveyed the wreckage with calm eyes, then turned back to them. "Clean it up." The twins burst into laughter. Chloe tossed her hair dramatically. "That's your job, Maid." Angela tilted her head. "Wrong. I'm not the maid. I'm the one teaching you how to survive when the maids quit on you again. So clean it up." Ethan crossed his arms. "And if we don't?" Angela smiled faintly. "Then I'll tell your father exactly why his $1 million kitchen looks like a war zone. Do you think he'll be proud?" The children exchanged glances. Their father was rarely home, but when he was, his temper was legendary. Even Ethan's smirk faltered. Angela placed a mop in Ethan's hands and gloves in Chloe's. "Start. Now." For the next hour, the children scrubbed, mopped, and scraped the disaster they had created. Complaints flew nonstop. "This is child labor." Chloe shouted. "I can't breathe with this smell," cried one twin. Ethan muttered under his breath, but he still cleaned. When the last pancake was scraped off the ceiling, Angela clapped her hands once. "Good. Lesson learned. You break it. You fix it. Don't expect someone else to clean up your messes in life." The children thought the battle was over, but Angela knew better. Later that night, the sabotage escalated. Chloe dumped a bucket of water outside Angela's bedroom door, hoping she'd slip. The twins hit her alarm clock, so she'd oversleep. Ethan, the ringleader, hatched the boldest plan. He bribed the chauffeur to accidentally misplace Angela's bag of personal belongings, hoping she'd quit in frustration. But Angela was sharper than they realized. She stepped over the water trap without a stumble, woke up on time by using the sun as her alarm, and when her bag vanished, she calmly approached Ethan. "You think I need that bag?" she asked, looking him dead in the eyes. "I came here with nothing. I can live with nothing again. Can you?" Ethan's confidence cracked. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. Angela leaned closer, her voice a whisper only he could hear. "I know what you're doing, and I'm not leaving, no matter how hard you push." The look in her eyes sent a chill through Ethan. He realized something he had never admitted before. This woman wasn't afraid of them. That night, as Angela closed her door, she knew the war had officially begun. The sabotage wars continued for days, but Angela never flinched. She outsmarted every trap, met every insult with calm, and answered defiance with quiet strength. The children were beginning to notice something unsettling. Nothing they did seemed to break her. One afternoon, Angela walked into the living room and found Chloe sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone with a frown. The twins were upstairs, and Ethan had gone out with friends. It was the first time Chloe was alone with her. Angela sat down across from her, folding laundry in silence. "You know," Chloe muttered without looking up, "you're weird." Angela raised an eyebrow. "Weird how? You don't yell. You don't cry. Every other maid would have quit already." Chloe finally glanced at her. "It's like you don't care." Angela smiled softly. "You're wrong. I care very much. That's why I'm still here." Chloe rolled her eyes. "Yeah, right. You just need the paycheck." Angela set down the shirt she was folding. Her voice was calm but steady. "Chloe, I don't stay in places just for money. I stay where I'm needed." Something flickered across the girl's face, but she masked it quickly with another scoff. "Whatever." She returned to her phone, pretending not to care. Angela stood and walked toward the kitchen, but before leaving, she said gently, "For someone who pretends to hate me, you spend a lot of time watching me." Chloe froze. That evening, fate created an unexpected moment. The rain poured heavily, thunder shaking the mansion. Angela was heading upstairs when she heard faint sobs. Following the sound, she found Chloe curled in her massive bedroom, hugging her knees, her phone tossed aside. Angela knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Chloe." The girl quickly wiped her face. "Go away." Angela didn't move. "Thunder scares you, doesn't it?" "No," Chloe snapped, but her trembling hands gave her away. Angela quietly entered and sat on the floor beside the bed, keeping her distance. She didn't touch her, didn't pry, just sat in silence as the storm raged outside. After a while, Chloe whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Mom used to sit with me when it stormed, before she left." Her voice cracked. Angela's heart ached. She finally understood. The rebellion, the cruelty, the walls. Chloe wasn't just spoiled. She was hurting. Angela spoke gently. "You don't have to hide it, Chloe. Missing her doesn't make you weak." Tears spilled down Chloe's face, but she turned away, ashamed. "If I cry, Ethan says I'm pathetic." The twins laugh. "Daddy doesn't even notice." Angela reached out, placing a hand lightly on Chloe's arm. "You're not pathetic. You're human, and you don't have to be strong all the time." For the first time since Angela arrived, Chloe didn't pull away. She let the tears fall, sobbing quietly as Angela sat with her through the storm. When the thunder finally softened, Chloe whispered, "Don't tell anyone." Angela smiled. "Your secret's safe with me." In that fragile moment, the first crack appeared in Chloe's hardened heart. After that stormy night with Chloe, something subtle shifted in the mansion. Chloe wasn't exactly friendly, but she wasn't openly hostile anymore. She still threw in sarcastic remarks, but her eyes softened in moments she thought no one noticed. The real challenge, however, was the twins, Liam and Lucas. The mischievous duo treated Angela like their personal punching bag. They tied her shoelaces together, put slime on doorknobs, and even replaced the sugar jar with salt. Their laughter echoed through the halls every time she fell for one of their pranks. But Angela refused to give them what they wanted, anger. Instead, she smiled and played along, which confused them more than anything. One Saturday morning, The twins were in the backyard, plotting their next grand scheme, when Angela approached with a tray of lemonade. "Who wants to try the best lemonade in the world?" she asked cheerfully. The boys exchanged mischievous grins. "What's the catch?" Liam asked. "No catch," Angela replied, setting the tray down on the garden table. "Just thirsty kids who look like they've been plotting something big." The twins stiffened. How did she know? Angela leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You two are prank masters, right?" Lucas puffed his chest proudly. "The best in the world." Angela smirked. "Then maybe I should test your skills." The boy's eyes widened. "You mean you let us prank you?" "Not just me," Angela said with a wink. "I'll even play along." The twins were stunned. No maid had ever willingly invited chaos before. It was always a battle of wills, but Angela was flipping the rules. Later that day, she let them sneak ketchup into her tea and pretended to gag dramatically. "Oh no, I've been poisoned," she cried, stumbling around the kitchen. The twins roared with laughter, rolling on the floor. The next day, she let them fill her shoes with whipped cream. When she slipped her feet in, she gasped and declared, "Looks like my toes are having dessert today." Again, the boys howled, unable to believe she wasn't mad. Gradually, their pranks turned into games. Instead of targeting her, they began including her. Hide and seek in the mansion, pillow fights in the living room, water balloon battles in the backyard. Angela became their playmate, not their victim. One evening, after an epic hide-and-seek game, the twins collapsed beside her on the couch, sweaty and laughing. "You're not like the others," Liam admitted between breaths. Angela smiled. "Why?" "Because I don't get angry." Lucas shook his head. "Because you actually like being with us." Angela's heart softened. "Of course I do. You two just needed someone to play with instead of against." The boys exchanged a glance, and for the first time, they hugged her tightly, surprising even themselves. From that moment, the twins stopped being her enemies. They became her little allies, her shadows in the mansion. Though they still couldn't resist a harmless prank now and then. But Angela didn't mind, because now, when they laughed, it wasn't at her expense, it was with her. While Angela was slowly softening Chloe and had already won over the twins, one mountain still stood tall, Ethan the eldest. Unlike his siblings, Ethan didn't prank or insult her. He simply ignored her. He walked past her as if she didn't exist, his tall frame exuding an aura of untouchable distance. At 17, he carried himself less like a teenager and more like a young man who had already seen too much of the world. He rarely spoke, but when he did, his words carried weight. The staff whispered that Ethan was a miniature version of Mr. Williams, cold, calculating, and dangerously intelligent. Angela noticed his patterns. He spent hours in the study, always buried in books. He avoided family dinners, claiming he had too much homework. And when he was in the same room, he sat in silence, observing everything with sharp eyes, as if he were always testing people. One night, Angela found him in the library, sitting with a leather-bound journal. She knocked lightly on the doorframe. "You shouldn't disturb me," Ethan said flatly without looking up. Angela hesitated but stepped inside anyway. "I just came to put the books back on the shelf. Don't worry, I won't bother you." Ethan's pen froze mid-sentence. He looked up, his piercing gaze locking on her. "That's what the others said. Then they quit." Angela blinked. "Quit? Because of you?" He smirked, closing the journal. "Because they couldn't handle this family. Because they were weak." Angela raised a brow. "Or maybe they just didn't try hard enough." His expression faltered. "No one ever talked back to him. And you think you're different." Angela smiled softly. "I don't think I know." For a moment, silence filled the air. Then Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. "You're not like the others," he finally muttered. Angela chuckled. "Funny, your brother said the same thing." Something flickered in his eyes, something vulnerable. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by his usual cool exterior. He stood, gathering his books. "You won't last long." "No one does." Angela crossed her arms. "Maybe that's because no one bothered to see you for who you are, Ethan. You're not cold. You're just careful." Her words landed deeper than she expected. Ethan's jaw tightened, and for the first time, he seemed unsettled. Without another word, he brushed past her and left the library. But Angela caught it. The slight pause at the door, the way his shoulders stiffened, as if her words had reached a place he had long kept locked. That night, Ethan lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, someone had seen through his walls, and it scared him. Until now, Angela's battles had been with the children. But one evening, everything shifted. The Williams mansion had been unusually quiet all day, the staff whispering nervously as they polished silverware and rearranged flowers in the grand dining hall. Angela, sensing the tension, asked the head maid what was happening. "He's coming," the woman whispered. "Who?" Angela asked. The maid gave her a look. "Mr. Williams." Angela's heart skipped. She had only heard of the elusive billionaire, James Williams, a man said to be ruthless in business, feared in courtrooms, and nearly invisible at home. His presence in the mansion was rare, almost mythical. That evening, the children were summoned to dinner, and for the first time, so was Angela. She entered the dining room cautiously. The air was thick with expectation. Then he walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. James Williams carried himself like a man who owned not just companies, but the very air people breathed. His eyes, steel gray and piercing, scanned the room. "Father," Chloe muttered, straightening in her chair. The twins instantly behaved, folding their hands neatly. Even Ethan, usually aloof, sat up straighter. Angela felt her pulse race as those eyes finally landed on her. He paused, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "And who is this?" His deep voice rumbled. Angela stood, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Angela Johnson, sir. The children's new nanny." His gaze lingered, sharp and unreadable. "New nanny? How long this time, Chloe?" Chloe flinched. 3 weeks. James raised a brow. 3 weeks? That's longer than the last 3 combined. His eyes returned to Angela. "Impressive. Most don't last 3 days." Angela met his gaze firmly. Maybe most didn't give the children a chance. The room went still. The staff froze, and even the children stared at her in shock. No one ever spoke to James Williams like that. For the first time, a hint of amusement touched his lips. He leaned back in his chair, pouring himself a glass of wine. "You're bold, Miss Johnson." Angela smiled faintly. "Only honest, sir." Dinner proceeded in tense silence, broken occasionally by James's sharp questions about school, grades, manners. He expected perfection, and the children seemed to crumble under his scrutiny. Angela watched closely. This wasn't just a strict father. This was a man who built walls as high at home as he did in the boardroom. And behind his coldness, she saw something else, loneliness. When dinner ended, James rose. "Miss Johnson, a word." Angela followed him into his study, her palms damp. He shut the door, his gaze steady. "You've done what others couldn't. They respect you. Even Ethan watches you. That is rare." Angela swallowed. "I only treated them as more than just responsibilities, Mr. Williams. They're children. They need to be seen." For a long moment, James studied her. Then, to her shock, his expression softened, just slightly. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "you're the one who should be seen." Angela's breath caught. In that moment, she realized something dangerous. James Williams was not just a man of power. He was a man with secrets. The storm came on a Friday night. Thunder cracked over the Williams mansion as rain hammered against tall windows. Inside, the atmosphere mirrored the chaos outside. Chloe had run off after another fight with her father. The twins were crying in their room, and Ethan had locked himself in the library, refusing to speak. Angela moved swiftly, her heart pounding. She found Chloe by the garden gazebo, shivering under the downpour. Wrapping her arms around the girl, she whispered, "You don't have to fight him by running. Fight him by showing him who you are." Chloe broke down, sobbing into Angela's shoulder. "He doesn't care. He only sees grades and rules." Angela held her tighter. "He cares, Chloe. He just doesn't know how to show it." By the time she returned Chloe to the house, James Williams was waiting in the foyer. His face was hard, but his eyes betrayed panic. When he saw Chloe safe, his chest heaved, and for a flicker of a second, relief washed over him. Angela stepped forward, dripping wet but defiant. "Mr. Williams, with all due respect, you're losing them. Not because you're too hard, but because you're too absent." Silence. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The twins crept downstairs, clinging to each other. Ethan appeared from the library, his jaw clenched but his eyes softer than usual. One by one, the children stood behind Angela, as if she were their shield. James's gaze swept over them, then returned to Angela. "And what would you have me do, Miss Johnson? Abandon my empire? Forget the world I've built?" Angela stepped closer, her voice firm yet tender. "What empire is worth anything if the people inside your own home feel like strangers?" The storm outside howled, but inside the mansion, something shifted. James's mask cracked. He looked at his children, really looked at them, for the first time in years. Ethan's defiance, Chloe's loneliness, the twins' desperate need for affection, and Angela, standing before him, refusing to back down. Slowly, James walked forward. He knelt in front of the twins, resting a hand on each of their shoulders. His voice broke. "I'm sorry." The twins burst into tears and threw their arms around him. Chloe hesitated, then joined them. Ethan lingered a moment longer before finally stepping into the embrace. Angela watched, her throat tight, her eyes burning. When James finally looked up at her, his expression was unguarded, stripped of power and pride. "You did what I couldn't, Angela. You gave them back to me." Angela shook her head softly. "No, Mr. Williams. They were always yours. They just needed you to come home." The storm outside began to quiet, and inside the mansion, for the first time, there was peace. James rose, his eyes never leaving hers. "Stay. Not just for them, but for me." Angela's breath caught, but she smiled. "Only if you promise one thing." "And what's that?" "That we build this family together." For the first time in years, James Williams smiled, genuine, unguarded, and full of hope. And just like that, the mansion, once filled with walls and shadows, became a home.